Businessman returns to his hometown after 20 years, and what he finds shocks him. Michael Harrison stepped on the brake of his red sports car and felt his heart race. Something was very wrong with White Rock, the small town in rural Florida where he had been born and raised. What was supposed to be a triumphant return after 2 decades building a business empire in New York City had turned into a nightmare he could never have imagined. Where there were once dozens of simple clay houses and a vibrant community life, now there were only ruins, overgrown weeds, and a deafening silence. Michael got out of the car on trembling legs, looking around unable to process what he was seeing. The main street, which in his childhood was bustling with children playing and adults chatting on the sidewalks, was completely deserted. He walked slowly to the house where he had grown up, a humble clay-walled building that his mother had always kept impeccable. The wooden door was ajar, creaking in the wind. Michael pushed it carefully and almost screamed when he saw a shadowy figure sitting in the dark. "Who's there?" he asked, his voice choked. An elderly lady slowly raised her head. Her white hair was disheveled and she wore a worn-out dress that had seen better days. Her eyes, however, still shone with an intelligence that Michael recognized immediately. "Mrs. Williams?" he whispered, remembering the old teacher from the local school. The woman stared at him for long seconds before speaking. "You shouldn't have come back, Michael Harrison, not after what you did to all of us." "What I did? I don't understand." "Mrs. Williams, it's me, Michael, Mrs. Johnson's son, remember me?" "I remember you very well," she replied bitterly. "I remember every promise you made and every life you destroyed." Michael felt the ground disappear beneath his feet. He had left White Rock at 18 to study business in Miami, then got a job at a multinational in New York City. Over the past 20 years, he built his own consulting firm and became a millionaire. He had always planned to return to help his hometown, but work and the hectic life in the big city never allowed it. "Mrs. Williams, I think there's a mistake. I left here 20 years ago to study. I never came back until today. How could I have done anything to harm you?" The retired teacher stood up with difficulty, leaning on an improvised cane. "Liar! You came back here 15 years ago, arrived in an imported car, wearing a fine suit, calling yourself a successful businessman. You promised to turn our town into a paradise, said you would build factories, hotels, a shopping center. That's impossible. I never. You convinced half the families to sell their land for a pittance, promising that in a few months it would be worth 10 times more. My own nephew sold the family house because he believed you." Michael grew more and more confused. How could someone have impersonated him? And why would they do that? Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. "Where are all the residents?" he asked, looking around the empty house. "They left little by little. First the young people, then the families with children. When they realized they had been tricked, it was too late. Many lost everything and had to start over in other towns." "And you? Why did you stay?" Mrs. Williams smiled sadly. "Because this has been my home for 70 years. I was born here, raised my children here, buried my husband in the cemetery here. I have nowhere to go, and I'm too old to start over." Michael felt a deep pain in his chest. He could see the suffering in the teacher's eyes, but he knew he was innocent of the accusations. "Mrs. Williams, I swear on my mother's memory that I haven't been here in the last 20 years. Someone pretended to be me. I need to find out who it was and how this happened. You want me to believe there's another Michael Harrison out there who knows every detail of your life and decided to come here and fool us. I know it seems impossible, but..." The teacher shook her head in disbelief. "He knew everything about you, told childhood stories that only you could know. Remembered the time you broke your arm falling from the mango tree in the schoolyard. Mentioned the nickname your mother gave you. Knew you always wanted to be a businessman since you were little." Michael fell silent. How could someone know so many intimate details of his life? "Mrs. Williams, are you sure it was me? I mean, couldn't it have been someone who looked like me?" "Looked like? Boy, he was exactly like you. The same height, the same face, the same voice. Even the way he walked was the same. This was getting stranger and stranger. Michael decided to explore the town more to try to understand what had happened. He said goodbye to the teacher, promising to return the next day, and went out to walk the deserted streets. The old Smith Brothers bakery had its doors bricked up. Old Joe's bar, where the men gathered to play dominoes on Sunday afternoons, had turned to ruins. The Brown family's grocery store, which sold a little bit of everything, was completely abandoned, with empty shelves and broken windows. Michael pushed the grocery store door open and went in. The smell of mold and dampness filled his nostrils. He turned on his cell phone flashlight and began to examine the place. Behind the counter, he found some old papers scattered on the floor. Looking closer, his blood ran cold. They were receipts for buying and selling land, all in his name. According to the documents, Michael Harrison had bought practically the whole town between 2010 and 2012. "This can't be right," he murmured, flipping through the papers with trembling hands. One signature caught his attention. It was perfect, identical to his own signature. Whoever had done that was an expert forger, or knew his handwriting better than he did. A noise from the back of the grocery store made him freeze. They were slow, dragging footsteps. Michael hid behind the counter, his heart beating out of rhythm. "I know someone's there," said a tired male voice. "You can come out. I won't hurt you." Michael hesitated for a few seconds before standing up. In front of him was a man of about 40, too thin, with unshaven beard and dirty clothes. It took a few seconds to recognize him. "Robert?" he asked in shock. Robert Wilson had been his best friend in childhood. Inseparable, they spent their days playing in the river, climbing trees, and inventing adventures. Robert had always been the more studious of the two, dreaming of being a history teacher. "So it's true, you came back," Robert said with a mix of anger and sadness. "Came to see the damage you caused?" "Robert, my friend, I didn't cause any damage. Someone pretended to be me. I haven't been here in the last 20 years. "Don't lie to me, Michael. I saw you with my own eyes. We talked for over 2 hours that Saturday afternoon in 2011. You were driving a black Lexus and wearing a navy blue suit." Michael shook his head vehemently. "Robert, in 2011 I was living in New York City, working 16 hours a day to establish my company. I didn't even have a Lexus back then. I drove a used Civic." "Stop this act. You know very well what you did." "What did I supposedly do?" Robert came closer, and Michael could see tears in his old friend's eyes. "You convinced my wife to sell our house. He said that in 6 months we'd have enough money to buy a mansion. Jennifer believed you because she'd known you since childhood. She always said you were like a brother to me." Robert's voice began to falter. "When the deadline passed and nothing happened, Jennifer fell into depression. She got sick, real sick. Couldn't bear the guilt of losing the family home. Was hospitalized at the Tampa hospital for months. Robert, I'm so sorry, but I swear that she never fully recovered. Now lives in a facility in Miami. Lost her will to live after discovering she'd been deceived." Michael felt like he'd been punched in the stomach. The pain in Robert's eyes was unbearable. "And you? How have you survived all these years?" "I do odd jobs here and there. Live out back in a shack I built with old boards. Survive on favors and Mrs. Williams' pension, who shares the little she has with me." "Why didn't you leave here too?" "Where would I go? I lost everything. And besides, someone needed to look after the teacher. She was like a mother to all of us." Michael knew anything he said would sound hollow at that moment. He needed to prove his innocence somehow. "Robert, I'm going to find out who did this and make it right for everyone. You might not believe me now, but—" "Make it right?" Robert let out a bitter laugh. "Jennifer needs ongoing medical treatment. That can't be fixed with money, Michael. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out now continuing." Robert turned his back and began walking toward the rear of the grocery store. "Robert, wait. I need to show you something." Michael pulled out his wallet and showed documents proving where he was in 2011. "Look here. This is my passport. See these stamps? I was in the United States in November 2011 at a business convention in Chicago. How could I have been here at the same time? Robert stopped and examined the documents in his cell phone's flashlight. His expression changed slightly. These could be forged. Robert, you've known me since we were kids. When have I ever lied to you? The old friend fell silent for long minutes, clearly conflicted. I don't know what to believe anymore, Michael. I only know my life was destroyed and you were involved somehow. Help me find the truth. Please, for our friendship. Robert sighed deeply. There's one thing that always bothered me. The Michael who was here in 2011 had a small scar on his forehead right here. He pointed to the right side of his forehead. You don't have that scar. Michael touched his own forehead. It was true, there was no mark there. You're sure about that? I am. At the time I thought you'd gotten hurt in some accident after you left here. But now... This new information gave Michael hope. It was the first concrete evidence that there really was another person involved. Robert, we need to talk to other people who are still here. I need to hear all versions of what happened. There aren't many people left to talk to. Besides me and Mrs. Williams, only 3 families remain, and they're real suspicious of strangers. But they'll talk to me if you're with me, won't they? Robert thought for a few moments. Maybe. But I can't guarantee they'll believe your story. The next day, Michael returned to town after spending a restless night at a hotel in a neighboring town. Robert was waiting for him at Mrs. Williams's house, along with a young woman about 30 years old. This is Emily, Robert introduced. She was 15 when everything happened. Her family was one of those that lost the most. Emily greeted Michael with obvious coldness. Mrs. Williams told me you're saying it wasn't you who deceived everyone. Is that right? That's right. I know it's hard to believe, but someone impersonated me. You want me to believe there's another person in the world who looks just like you and knows your whole life story? I know it seems impossible, but it's the truth. Emily crossed her arms. My family sold our house and the small farm we had to this double of yours. My father truly believed you would keep your promises. We lost everything. And where is your family now? My father got a job at a factory in Orlando. We live in a small, cramped apartment without the freedom we had here. My mother still cries when she remembers this house. Why did you stay here? Someone needed to take care of Mrs. Williams. And besides, this place is my roots. I can't imagine myself living forever in the big city. Mrs. Williams interrupted the conversation. Michael, you said yesterday you were going to prove your innocence. How do you plan to do that? First, I need to understand exactly what happened. I want to hear every detail from the first time this person showed up here. Emily settled into a wooden chair. I remember the day he arrived. It was a Saturday morning, very sunny. I was helping my mother hang laundry in the yard when we heard the sound of a very powerful car. How did he introduce himself? Said he was you, of course. Talked about having become a successful businessman in New York City and wanting to give back everything the town had given him in his childhood. Was he alone? He was, but he said he had a team of lawyers and engineers who would arrive in the coming days to start the projects. Robert added. He seemed to know everyone. Knew parents' names, remembered old stories, asked about specific people. He was very convincing. And what exactly were the promises he made? Mrs. Williams answered. Said he was going to build a clothing factory that would provide jobs for the whole town, promised a ranch resort to attract tourists, talked about paving all the streets, building a modern health clinic, improving the school. And in return, what did he ask for? That families sell their properties to him for a seemingly fair price, explained Emily. Said that when the projects were ready, the land would appreciate greatly, and he'd return it to everyone with profit. Did anyone get suspicious? Mr. Thompson from the cashew farm questioned some things, remembered Robert. But the man even knew the story of the well his grandfather had dug in the 1940s. How could anyone make up something like that? Michael was increasingly intrigued. How had this person gotten so much information about his life and the town? How long did he stay here? About 3 weeks the first time, answered Mrs. Williams. Stayed at Mrs. Parker's house, who at the time rented rooms to travelers. First time? Did he come back other times? He came back 2 more times. Once in December 2011 and again in March 2012, said Emily. The last time he brought papers he said were official contracts for the projects. And in those papers, was there anything suspicious? Robert made a face. For simple folks like us, everything looked very official. Had stamps, signatures, company logos. Who were we to question? Where are those papers now? I kept some, said Mrs. Williams. They're in a box at my house. The group went to the teacher's house. She rummaged through an old shoebox and pulled out a yellowed folder with several documents. Michael examined the papers carefully. There were purchase and sale agreements, construction blueprints, detailed budgets, and even promotional brochures for the future ventures. "This is very well done," he murmured, impressed with the level of detail. Whoever did this invested time and money into the scam. One of the documents caught his attention. It was a birth certificate in the name of Michael Harrison, but with a slightly different birth date from his. The difference was only 2 days. "This is strange," he said, showing the document to the others. "This date is not my birth date." Mrs. Williams took the paper and examined it carefully. But back then he said it was the correct date. He even mentioned that he always celebrated his birthday on a different day because of a mix-up with the registration. He said that? He did, and we believed him because, well, why would he lie about something so simple? Michael was starting to form a theory. Someone with access to his personal information, but not completely accurate. Someone who knew his story but had some details wrong. "Can I take these documents to analyze them better?" "You can, but bring them back. They're the only proof we have of what happened." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. Michael spent the rest of the day taking pictures and cataloging all the documents. That night at the hotel, he called a lawyer friend in New York City and asked him to investigate the companies mentioned in the contracts. "Michael, these companies did exist," said the lawyer the next day. "But they were shut down for fraudulent activities between 2013 and 2014. The owners disappeared with the investors' money." "So this person was involved with professional scammers?" "It seems so. I'll investigate further and send you a full report." Armed with this new information, Michael went back to White Rock. He found Robert fixing the fence in the back of Mrs. Williams's house. "Robert, I found out that the companies mentioned in the contracts were fraudulent. They were shut down for scams." Robert stopped working and looked at Michael. It means you were victims of a professional scam, and I'm a victim too because someone used my identity. But that doesn't explain how the person knew so many details about you." "I'm investigating that too. It could be someone who knows me personally." "Someone from your family?" Michael thought for a few moments. His family was small. His parents had already passed away. He was an only child. He had some distant cousins, but he hadn't been in touch with them for years. "I don't know. I need to think more." That afternoon, Emily showed up with some news. "Michael, I remembered something. The man who pretended to be you had a strange habit. He always touched the right side of his face when he was thinking. It was a very characteristic tic. And do I have that habit? No. At least I haven't noticed you doing it since you arrived. Another difference." Michael was becoming convinced that there really was another person involved, but he still couldn't imagine who it might be. "Emily, do you remember any other different details?" Now that I'm paying attention, the voice was slightly different too, deeper than yours, and he had a way of laughing that doesn't match you. "How so?" "It was a laugh that was more, I don't know how to explain. More forced, maybe. You laugh more naturally." Robert, who was listening to the conversation, added, "He also wore a lot of cologne, a very strong smell that lingered in the air after he left." "And do I wear cologne like that?" "No. Yours is very subtle, you can hardly smell it." These small differences were adding up and forming a pattern. Someone who knew Michael well enough to imitate him, but had his own characteristics that he couldn't completely hide. That night, Michael had an insight. He called his cousin Margaret, who lived in Miami and was the only relative he still kept in touch with. "Margaret, do you remember cousin Richard?" "Richard? Of course I remember. You two looked so much alike when you were little. Why are you asking? What happened to him? I haven't heard from him in years." Richard was always a bit strange, wasn't he? After he left home at 20, nobody really knew what became of him. I heard he got mixed up in some trouble, but I don't know the details. Trouble like what? Scams, forging documents, that sort of thing. His mother was so ashamed she moved to another city, went to live in Jacksonville with her daughter. Michael's heart started racing. Margaret, do you have Aunt Catherine's phone number? I need to speak with her urgently. Yes, I do, but why all this hurry? It's a long story. I'll explain everything later. Michael called Aunt Catherine that same night. The woman was surprised to hear his voice after so many years. Michael, my boy, I've missed you. How are you? I'm fine, Aunt, but I need to ask you something important about Richard. The silence on the other end of the line was long and heavy. What do you want to know about him? Where is he? What's he been doing? My boy, Richard has caused me so much grief. I haven't known where he is for over 5 years. The last I heard, he was in prison in Georgia for fraud. Has he gotten out of prison? I don't know, Michael. He never contacted me again. Do you think something happened? Aunt, was Richard always jealous of me? Another long silence. Why are you asking that? Please, it's very important. Richard always admired you so much ever since you were children, but sometimes I felt it was a kind of unhealthy admiration. He wanted to be just like you in everything. He copied your way of speaking, your walk, even the way you comb your hair. And physically? Did he continue to look like me? You two always looked so much alike, especially after he had plastic surgery on his nose to look even more like you. That was about 10 years ago. Michael felt his blood run cold. He had plastic surgery to look like me. Yes, he said he always wanted a nose just like yours. He spent a fortune at a clinic in New York City. Aunt, I need the name of that clinic and any information you have about Richard. It's urgent. My God, Michael, what's going on? I'll explain everything later. Please, help me. Aunt Catherine provided all the details she could remember. Michael wrote everything down carefully and spent the rest of the night researching on the internet. He found records for the plastic surgery clinic and managed to confirm that Richard had indeed had a procedure to alter his facial appearance. He also discovered that Richard had been arrested 3 times for scams involving identity forgery. The next day, Michael returned to White Rock with a folder full of information about his cousin. He gathered Mrs. Williams, Robert, and Emily in the teacher's living room. Everyone, I found out who impersonated me. It was my cousin Richard. He showed old photos of Richard and explained the whole family history. Look here, he said, showing a photo from when they were 15. We really did look a lot alike, and then he had plastic surgery to look even more like me. Mrs. Williams examined the photos carefully. Truly, the resemblance is striking. But how did he know so many details about your life? My cousin told me he was always obsessed with me. He probably spent years following me, maybe even hiring private detectives. He knew about my company in New York City. He knew about my personal life. Robert shook his head, incredulous. So all our misfortune was caused by your crazy relative? Unfortunately, it seems so. Emily was visibly emotional. Does this mean you really are innocent? It does, but that doesn't lessen my moral responsibility. Even though I didn't directly cause this, it was my identity that was used to harm you all. I need to fix this mistake. How? Asked Mrs. Williams. First, I'll try to find Richard and make him return the money he stole. Second, I'll use my resources to rebuild what was destroyed here. Robert looked at him skeptically. And how will you find someone who doesn't want to be found? I'll hire the best detectives in the country, and I'll offer a reward for information about his whereabouts. And if you can't find him? Even if I can't, I'll reimburse everyone out of my own pocket. It's not fair that you pay for what my cousin did. Mrs. Williams approached and touched Michael's arm. My son, you have no obligation to do this. Yes, I do, teacher. Morally, I do. In the following weeks, Michael put his plan into action. He hired an investigation agency specialized in locating missing persons and offered a reward of $50,000 for information about Richard. While waiting for investigation results, he began working on the reconstruction of White Rock. He hired a cleaning company to remove the weeds and debris from the abandoned houses. He surveyed all the families that had been harmed and created a fund for reimbursement. The news of Michael's return and his intentions to rebuild the town spread quickly. Some families that had moved away began returning, hopeful. But not everything was easy. Many still doubted Michael's version and thought it was just a new strategy to deceive them. "Why should we trust you now?" asked Mr. Thompson, who had returned from Miami. "How do we know you won't deceive us again?" "Because this time I'm not asking for anything in return," replied Michael. "I don't want anyone to sell properties or sign contracts. I just want to return the dignity that was taken from you." Gradually, distrust gave way to cautious hope. Michael demonstrated his sincerity through concrete actions. He renovated the school, hired teachers, installed a mobile health clinic that came twice a week. 1 month after the reconstruction began, the private detective called with important news. "Mr. Michael, we found your cousin. He's hospitalized in a hospital in Atlanta. Apparently he suffered a car accident a few months ago." "What's his condition?" "Stable, but with after effects. According to the information we gathered, he lost part of his memory." "When can I visit him?" "Whenever you want. But I should warn you, he might not remember what he did in White Rock." Michael traveled to Atlanta the next day, accompanied by Robert, who insisted on going along. At the hospital, they found Richard in a bed, visibly weakened. The physical resemblance was still striking, even with him injured. "Richard?" Michael called softly. His cousin opened his eyes and stared at him without expression. "Who are you?" "I'm your cousin Michael. Do you remember me?" Richard remained silent for a long time, apparently struggling to remember. "Michael, yes, I think I remember. You're younger than me, right? Actually, we're the same age. Richard, I need to ask you about something that happened a few years ago." "My memory isn't very good. The doctors said the accident affected part of my brain." Robert approached the bed. "Do you remember being in a town called White Rock in Florida?" Richard made a confused expression. "White Rock? That name sounds familiar, but I can't remember properly." Michael decided to be direct. "Richard, you impersonated me in that town. You deceived several families, made them sell their houses promising investments that never existed." Richard's expression changed slightly. For a few seconds, it seemed like something had clicked in his mind. I did this? You did, and now these people are suffering because of you." Richard began to cry softly. "I don't remember clearly, but I was always very envious of you, Michael. You were always the successful cousin, the one everyone admired. I wanted to be like you. Where is the money you got from this scam?" "What money? I don't have any money." Robert got irritated. "What do you mean you don't have any? You stole tens of thousands of dollars." "I spent it all," Richard whispered. "I spent it on gambling, on women, on drugs. I never managed to save money. I've always been irresponsible." Michael felt a mix of anger and pity for his cousin. Even if Richard wanted to return the money, apparently there was no way. "Richard, do you want to redeem yourself for what you did?" "How? I can barely walk properly after the accident." "You can give a written statement confessing everything you did. This will help the people of White Rock understand that I wasn't the one to blame." "I can do that, but my memory is very fuzzy. I might not remember all the details." "That's okay. The important thing is to take responsibility for what you did." With the help of a lawyer, Richard drafted a detailed confession, acknowledging that he had impersonated Michael and deceived the residents of White Rock. The document was notarized and authenticated. Back in town, Michael gathered all the residents for a meeting at the renovated school. "Folks, I have here the confession of the real person responsible for the problems you've faced." He read Richard's confession aloud. The room was completely silent. When he finished, Mr. Thompson stood up. "Michael, on behalf of all of us, I apologize for the unfair accusations we made against you." "You don't need to apologize. It was natural for you to doubt me. The important thing is that now we know the truth." Mrs. Williams also spoke up. "My son, you've already done so much for us. You renovated our school, brought the health clinic, cleaned the streets. You didn't have to do all that." "Yes, I did, teacher. You were victims because of my name. It was my moral obligation to help." Emily raised her hand. "Michael, what will happen now? Will you leave and put all this behind you? Michael had thought a lot about that question in recent days. Actually, I'm thinking of staying. A murmur of surprise went through the room. You mean you're going to live here in White Rock? Yes. My company in New York City is well structured and can function without my physical presence. I can work from here over the internet. And besides, this town needs someone to help with sustainable development. Robert approached with tears in his eyes. Michael, after everything that happened, you still want to stay here? Robert, this is my place. It took me 20 years to realize it, but this is my place. In the following months, White Rock underwent an unbelievable transformation. With Michael's leadership and the growing support of the residents, the town not only recovered its vitality, but became a model of sustainable development. Michael created a crafts cooperative that utilized the traditional skills of the residents. Emily became the project coordinator, organizing workshops and fairs to sell the products in larger cities. Robert, with Michael's help, managed to bring Jennifer back home. Medical treatment continued, but now in a family environment, which accelerated her recovery remarkably. Jennifer, do you remember Michael? Robert asked on the day she arrived. Jennifer looked at Michael with a weak but genuine smile. Yes, I remember. You used to play with Robert when we were children. I'm so glad you came back to take care of us. Mrs. Williams, despite her advanced age, became a sort of advisor for the reconstruction project. Your experience as a teacher was essential for organizing literacy courses for adults and activities for the children. Michael, she said one afternoon as they watched the children playing in the renovated square, you know your mother would be very proud to see what you've done here. Mrs. Williams, it was you who taught me the values that allowed me to do this. The credit is yours too. No, my son, the credit is yours. You could have simply proven your innocence and left. But you chose to stay and fix what was broken. The town started attracting outside attention. Journalists came to do stories about the reconstruction project. A university from Miami sent business students to study the development model implemented by Michael. But not everything was perfect. There were conflicts about how to use the available resources, disagreements about which direction to take in the town's development, moments of discouragement when projects didn't progress at the expected speed. In one of the most tense meetings, Mr. Thompson confronted Michael. You're trying to turn our town into something it never was. Some of us prefer the simple life we've always had. Mr. Thompson, I'm not trying to force changes. I'm just offering opportunities. Whoever wants to keep living as they always have has complete freedom to do so. But the changes affect everyone, whether we want it or not. Michael understood the man's concern. It was important to find a balance between progress and preserving local traditions. Let's do this. We'll create a town council with representatives from all the families. No important decision will be made without majority approval. The proposal was accepted and the council became the town's decision-making body. Michael participated as a regular member without special privileges. 1 year after the reconstruction began, White Rock was unrecognizable. The houses had been renovated, maintaining the traditional architectural style, but with improvements in sanitation and electricity. The school served not only local children, but also those from neighboring towns. The crafts cooperative had expanded to include homemade sweets and small organic agricultural products. The health clinic, which started as a mobile service, now operated full-time with a resident nurse. But most important was the community spirit that had been restored. Families gathered again on Sunday afternoons in the central square. Children played freely in the safe streets. The elders told stories to the younger ones, keeping the region's oral tradition alive. Michael built himself a simple house just like the others, on the same land where he had grown up. Every morning he woke up to birdsong and walked through the streets, greeting every resident by name. "Good morning, Mr. Michael." He was greeted by the children on their way to school. "Good morning, everyone. Study hard." He established a balanced routine between work and community life. In the morning, he handled his company business in New York City through video conferences. In the afternoon, he participated in cooperative activities or helped with town improvement projects. One evening, while having dinner with Robert and Jennifer in the couple's renovated house, Robert reflected, "Michael, sometimes I think that maybe it was good that all this happened." "How so?" If it weren't for your cousin's scheme, you would never have come back here. And we would never have discovered that it's possible to live better without abandoning our roots. Jennifer, who had recovered very well from the trauma, agreed. Robert is right. Sometimes bad things happen to lead us to a better place. Michael reflected on his friend's words. It was true that his life had completely changed, and for the better. In New York City, despite his financial success, he felt empty, without any real purpose. Here in White Rock, every day had meaning. "You know I have to thank you too, right?" said Michael. "You gave me the opportunity to redeem myself and welcomed me back as family." "You've always been family," said Jennifer. "It just took you a while to come back home." 2 years after the reconstruction began, White Rock received a special visitor. Richard, now recovered from the accident, showed up in town on a Saturday afternoon. Michael was helping organize the monthly fair when someone told him there was a visitor wanting to speak with him. "Michael?" Richard was visibly nervous. "Can I talk to you?" "Of course. Let's go to my house." On the way, several townspeople looked curiously at the visitor, noticing his physical resemblance to Michael. At the house, the two cousins sat on the simple porch. "How are you, Richard?" "Better. The doctors said I've recovered almost all my memory, and that includes remembering everything I did here." Michael noticed his cousin was genuinely emotional. "I came to ask for forgiveness, from you and from all the people I hurt. Richard, please let me speak. I spent 2 years thinking about this. I destroyed innocent people's lives out of pure envy and greed. There's no excuse for what I did. What matters is that you recognize it now. I want to do something to make up for it. I know I don't have money, but I can work. I can help with the reconstruction." Michael was surprised by the proposal. "Are you sure about this? People here still hold a lot of resentment about what happened." "I understand, but I need to try. I need to look into the eyes of every person I hurt and ask for forgiveness personally." Michael thought for a few moments. "I'll make a proposal. You can stay here for a week. I'll introduce you to people and explain your situation. If they accept your presence, you can participate in community work. But if anyone feels uncomfortable, you'll have to leave. Do you accept?" "I accept." Richard's arrival caused an uproar in town. Many residents were outraged and demanded he leave immediately. Others, more tolerant, felt he deserved a chance to redeem himself. The town council held a special meeting to decide whether Richard could stay. "This man destroyed our lives," protested Mr. Thompson. "Why should we forgive him?" Mrs. Williams, despite her age, spoke up. "Because forgiveness is what makes us human. If he's genuinely sorry and wants to help, we should give him a chance." "But how do we know if the remorse is real?" questioned another resident. Emily, who had become a respected leader in town, made a proposal. "How about we give a trial period, 3 months? If he shows through his actions that he's changed, we consider letting him stay permanently." The proposal was put to a vote. By a small margin, it was approved. Richard dedicated himself fully to community work. He woke before dawn to help clean the streets. He worked in the community garden, helped build a new bridge over the creek, participated in all activities without ever complaining. Gradually, the initial hostility gave way to cautious acceptance. Richard showed himself to be humble, hard-working, and genuinely remorseful. One day, while working together in the garden, Robert said to Richard, "You know I'll never forget what you did to my wife, right?" "I know, and I don't expect you to forget. I just hope that one day you might forgive me. Forgiveness doesn't erase what happened, but maybe it makes it possible to move forward." At the end of 3 months, the council met again. This time the vote was unanimous. Richard could stay. "But with one condition," said Mrs. Williams. "You're going to help tell our story to visitors and students who come here. It's important that people know it's possible to redeem yourself from your mistakes." Richard accepted the condition with gratitude. In the following years, White Rock became established as an example of sustainable development and community reconciliation. The town's story, with its tragedies and triumphs, became the subject of academic books and documentaries. Michael, now officially considered a community leader, never tired of saying that the real credit belonged to the residents who chose to forgive and rebuild together. One morning, 5 years after the whole story began, Michael was having coffee on his porch when Mrs. Williams appeared. "Good morning, teacher. How are you feeling?" "Well, my boy, I came here because I have something to tell you." She sat in the rocking chair that Michael had bought especially for her visits. "You know I'm 82 years old, right?" "I do, but you're strong as an ox." "Michael, I want to tell you that you've become the man I always knew you could be." "Teacher." "Let me finish. When you were a boy, I saw something special in you, a natural kindness, a desire to help. But I also saw that you were in a hurry to leave here, to conquer the world out there. And I really was. And you were right to be. You needed to leave, to grow, to learn, to become who you are today. If you had stayed here back then, maybe you wouldn't have developed the leadership skills you have now." Michael reflected on his teacher's words. "So you think all this was part of a bigger plan?" "I don't know if it was a plan, but I know that sometimes life takes us down strange paths to teach us what really matters. And what really matters, teacher? People, my boy. The people we love and who love us. The community we build together. The legacy we leave for future generations." That afternoon, Michael walked through the streets of White Rock, observing the life pulsing around him. Children played in the renovated square. Young people studied in the modern school. Adults worked in the cooperative. Elderly folks chatted in the shade of the century-old trees. At Robert and Jennifer's house, he found the couple tending the garden. Jennifer had fully recovered and had returned to smiling like in the old days. "Hi, Michael," she waved. "Come see the roses we planted." The roses were magnificent, coloring the yard with all shades of red and pink. "They're beautiful, congratulations. Robert said they're to celebrate the new life we started here," explained Jennifer. "And it's true," confirmed Robert, appearing from inside the house. "Each rose represents a new beginning, a new hope." That evening, Michael had dinner with Emily at her house. The young woman had married a boy from a neighboring town who had moved to White Rock, attracted by the development project. "Michael, I have some news to tell you," said Emily with a smile on her face. "What?" "I'm pregnant." Michael stood up and hugged her emotionally. "What wonderful news! Congratulations." "I wanted to thank you. If it weren't for you, I never would have met David. And I probably would have left here without ever realizing my dream of starting a family in my hometown. Emily, the credit is all yours. You're the one who chose to stay and fight for this place. We chose together, all of us." On his way home, Michael passed by the school where Mrs. Williams had planted a medicinal herb garden. The scent of the plants perfumed the warm night. Sitting on the porch of his simple house, he looked at the stars and thought about how his life had changed. In New York City, he lived in a luxurious penthouse but felt alone. Here, in a 2-bedroom house, he felt complete. His cell phone rang. It was his assistant from New York City. "Hi, Michael. Sorry to call so late, but a very interesting offer came in." "What is it?" "A multinational wants to buy your company. The offer is very good. You'd become very rich." Michael smiled. "Very rich? How?" "Rich enough to buy an entire city. I already have a city, and it's not for sale." "What do you mean?" "Thank you for the information, but I'm not interested in selling." After hanging up, Michael realized he had found something more valuable than money, a purpose in life. The following Sunday, as was tradition, the whole community gathered in the square for the community lunch. Each family brought a dish and everyone ate together under the shade of the trees. Richard, now fully integrated into the community, helped serve the children. Robert and Jennifer distributed the homemade fruit juice. Emily organized recreational activities for the little ones. Mrs. Williams, sitting in a special chair they had prepared for her, watched everything with a serene smile. "Teacher," Michael approached, "what are you thinking about?" "I'm thinking that this is the true wealth, this unity, this harmony, this sense of belonging." "You're right. And I'm also thinking that your mother would be very proud to see the man you've become." Michael felt his eyes well up. "Mrs. Williams, you've been like a mother to me since I came back. And you're like a son to me, my dear." When the sun began to set, painting the sky gold and red, Michael climbed onto the small stage they had built for community events. "Everyone, can I say something?" They all gathered around the stage. Today marks exactly 5 years since I returned to White Rock. 5 years since my life completely changed. Spontaneous applause interrupted his speech. When I arrived here, I thought I was just going to clear up a misunderstanding and leave. I never imagined I would find my true family, my true home. Mrs. Williams waved to him from her place of honor. I learned that it doesn't matter how far we go or how high we climb. What matters is having people to share our successes with and who welcome us in our defeats. I learned that forgiving isn't forgetting what happened, but choosing to move forward together despite what happened. He looked at Richard, who was visibly moved. I learned that it's possible to rebuild what was destroyed, and that often the result is better than the original. But most of all, I learned that home isn't where we're born. Home is where we choose to stay. The applause was long and emotional. Several people were crying with emotion. When the noise died down, Michael continued, I want you all to know that I don't plan on leaving here ever again. White Rock is my home forever. The celebration continued into the night. There was music, dancing, and many stories told around the bonfire they lit in the square. Late at night, when everyone had gone home, Michael stayed alone in the square, organizing the chairs and picking up trash. It was his tradition to always leave everything clean after events. Robert showed up to help. You didn't have to stay, Robert. I wanted to. I like these quiet moments after the party. The two worked together in comfortable silence. Michael, can I ask you something? Sure. Do you regret anything? Leaving here when you were young? Losing 20 years? Michael thought about the question while stacking the chairs. I don't regret leaving. It was necessary. I needed to grow, learn, develop professionally. If I had stayed, I wouldn't have the skills I have today to help the community. And the 20 lost years? They weren't lost. They were invested. Every experience I had in New York City prepared me for this moment. And the suffering your cousin's betrayal caused? That I deeply regret. But even he served to bring us closer together and to show our ability to overcome. Robert smiled. You've always been a philosopher, haven't you? I learned to be. Life teaches you many things when you're willing to learn. When they finished cleaning up, the two walked together to Robert's house. Good night, my friend. They said goodbye with a hug. Good night, and thank you for everything. Thank you. Michael walked to his house thinking about how life had given him the opportunity to fix something that wasn't even broken, and how that opportunity had turned into the greatest achievement of his life. In his simple home before going to sleep, he wrote in his diary, a practice he had adopted since returning to White Rock. Today marks 5 years since I came back home. 5 years since I discovered that being rich has nothing to do with money. It has to do with love, with purpose, with community. It has to do with waking up every day knowing your life makes a difference in other people's lives. If I could go back in time and prevent Richard from doing what he did, would I? Honestly, I don't know. Because it was that tragedy that brought me back home. It was that pain that united us. It was that overcoming that showed us what we're capable of. Maybe that's what life really is. A collection of experiences, some good, some bad, that shape us until we become the best version of ourselves. And the best version of myself was only possible here, in White Rock, alongside the people I love. He closed the diary and looked out the window. Outside, the town slept peacefully under a starry sky. A gentle breeze swayed the trees. In the distance, he could hear the sound of the creek that ran through town. Michael smiled and lay down. For the first time in a long while, he knew exactly where he belonged. End of story. So, what did you think of this story of overcoming and starting over? Do you think Michael made the right decision by leaving everything behind in New York City? Do you believe it's possible to forgive someone who caused us as much suffering as Cousin Richard? Leave your opinions in the comments and share your own experiences of forgiveness and new beginnings. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more heartwarming stories like this one.